Welcome back to another video of my Warhammer collection. This is part 2. This is my Blood Angels that have been painted, both a mixture of 40k and Horus Heresy, as you can see, including everyone's favourite Hawkboy, Sanguinius. Awesome miniature. I'll talk about the story of that a bit later. But yeah, if you enjoyed this series so far, please leave a like and give a subscribe. It makes such a difference to the channel, honestly, especially in these early days where trying to make this channel grow is really, really difficult. I mean, I've been doing this for a year and a bit with the acting side of things, and now we're going more into hobby and adventurous stuff. Then, yeah, it'd be really nice if you could leave a like. But let's get into the main part of the video. Let's show you these miniatures up close and personal, starting with the 40k kill team. Now, this is my veteran sergeant, or I suppose just a squad sergeant, but he is the first squad, so I'd consider him part of the company heroes. Obviously his base doesn't say that, but he is my Blood Angels squad sergeant. And yeah, really, really nice miniature. He's not entirely completed. I've still got some buttons that need doing on here and some fine details on his hand. But for the most part, his miniature is done. His backpack requires quite a bit of highlighting still. This is the first trial of my colour run for Blood Angels armour. I was following one of the heavy metal videos, and as you can see I've done like some highlight spots on the knee pads, which I'll point the light up. They're not far off where natural light should be hitting. But yeah, the miniature itself has taken quite a lot of time to paint the lower section. I've sped up the process a bit more for the top. It was a bit unsustainable to have that sort of a painting level of detail, and to get that colour absolutely bob on. It'd have taken far too long to do this miniature otherwise. But yeah, nice weathering to his decals. Really nice miniature overall. And yeah, coming to a kill team board near you. I also have my Blood Angels captain. So this one, he doesn't give off too much of a Blood Angel vibe. Obviously, I've done the best that I can with what is just a standard Blood Angels miniature. This does not have anything from the Blood Angels upgrade sprue on it other than the shoulder pad. The transfer, should I say, on the shoulder pad. But otherwise, it is just painted in a way that is obviously Blood Angels. Obviously, the two-tone power fist. That's like a staple. I've done gold trim on the armour, which the way that you do that is imagine doing a thick highlight layer with like a, I think I used possibly Rhinox hide, because you have a warmer, reddier brown, but it's a dark brown. Going over Retributor armour, little bits of washes in there as well. And you'll notice for his faceplate as well, that is gold, as in the old school style of a Praetor or an old Heresy style veteran. So that's a bit of a nod to the Heresy army that you're going to see shortly. I really, really like this miniature. Again, you see lots of details with Retributor armour that has been coated in Dakarov flesh. It gives off this really nice warm tone of armour. The kind that you get with Reichland flesh, but I think it works so much nicer. It's richer, it's a bit more matted, it looks a bit more worn and torn. It looks like it's actually seen some battle, maybe a bit of tarnishing. Because I imagine they're not using pure gold for these things, although maybe some of their planets are very abundant in it. I imagine some of these are things that will make do, because they are used for combat. But yeah, the colour of his tabard as well is a similar colour that I use to the Purity Seals, which is going on a bit more of a pinky purple tone. I think that goes nicely with the red. It doesn't contrast it highly, it doesn't stand out as much. But when you use the reverse of like that tan, same with the cape, which is tan, it just has a nice little complement without being too far away from the colour scheme. Because again, if you look at this model, your colours mainly are tan/gold, white, red and black. That's your main focus colours. Again, the cape on this is black, which is going back to decades of the way that I've seen Blood Angels painted, which is that fleshy, fleshy coloured inside of the cape with that black outer. I think it just looks really, really neat and tidy. And you see him on a board and you know exactly who you're coming up against. Now, what actually inspired that Space Marine Captain's cape was the Terminator Sergeant from Space Hulk. This is actually from the second release, which was back in... Geez, this is a while ago. Like 2007-ish? I don't know, around that period. Quite a lot of years ago. As you can see, I painted this as the box art used to be, and unfortunately it is missing the chalice that was on top of his armour. I have no idea where it's gone. I've looked all over for it. I have a bits box that I've scoured. I've looked in all of my old boxes. I'm yet to find it, but as soon as I find it, this one can get torn off. This, if you're wondering, is actually the set from the Blood Angels upgrade pack, and it's one of the vehicle additions just to make it look a bit more Blood Angels-y, but I thought this on top doesn't look too bulky. It looks fine. It's not the chalice, which is a bit frustrating, but at least I have the chalice that's hanging from the Thunderhammer Sergeant, so silver linings. But yes, this is going back to the cape, where it used to be a fleshy tone. This is obviously more cream than my Captain's, which is more accurate to how I wanted it to be originally. But we're talking, God, 20 years between these miniatures, roughly. Maybe a little bit less, but we're around that sort of a mark. But yeah, that's what inspired it. Wonderful, wonderful miniature. Full of so much character. I mean, every detail on this screams Blood Angels, which is exactly how it should be. This is where I think modern 40k Blood Angels are just being decimated. The miniatures are bland. I mean, the character miniatures are okay, but the actual, like, an Intercessor squad of Blood Angels looks like red painted Intercessors. They've lost the character that made them Blood Angels. Blood Angels have ornate armour. They need more than just shoulder pads. They need chest pieces, they need leg pieces, they need individual kits. And I'm sure a lot of people that, you know, are waiting for old Chaos Space Marine units to get refreshed, and they're going, well, your Blood Angels can wait, pal. Yeah, sure. But I'm not buying new Blood Angels until those kits are out, because they're uselessly bland. It's fine when you have the likes of your Ultramarines and you have so many unique characters, so many unique kits that you're able to mix and match and add bits on, and to be fair, the upgrade screws better. But for Blood Angels, this is the level of ornate that you want, and I've had to try and replicate it as best as is physically possible with this new style of Captain. Also, look at the difference in size scale there. That is roughly foot to foot there. They're about the same height. Which, this model, I have 40mm round MDF bases, and it'll literally sit on top of that, and it should be a little bit taller for it. But yeah, they are a little bit smaller. I don't mind the scale too much. Again, I would rather put this on than any regular Terminator, because the details on this is just, you know, it's astounding. It's honestly one of the most beautiful miniatures that they had ever produced at the time. So, going from Space Marine Captains, Blood Angel Captains, to one of my absolute favourites, this is Dante. This is my original Dante. He is a metal figure, so he's very top heavy, and holding him like this is a little bit dangerous. The miniature itself is reasonably well detailed. Sections like his lower ribcage style on his armour, I've had to try and highlight that as best as possible with the paintbrush just to really make it pop. It's not as crazy as the new model. It's not as crazy as the new model, is what I'm trying to say. The new model is 30 years newer. This is a very, very old miniature. Let me move that out of the way so hopefully it focuses correctly. But yeah, you can see him during like the devastation of Baal. You got a Primarch's helmet there. Ignore that, it's just an old Mark IV helmet, clearly. You got some guardsmen that have been massacred and a Tyrannid that's obviously had its head lopped off. It's a friggin' awesome miniature for considering its age, and yeah, his posing was fairly decent. Again, this is such an old mini, and yet the design still holds up reasonably well. The size does not. Let me get a modern Primaris Marine and put them base to base there. You can see the difference in level between them. And if I actually put them about the feet at the same height, that's insane. That's the difference of 30 years more than anything else. Just the size. Now remember, this is a modern Primaris sculpt. This was the Space Marine Heroes set that came out in the starter set for Kill Team. This is new Dante. And the one problem I have with new Dante, and it seems to be a case of, you know, he's the chapter master, he's in lieu of any Primarch or anything that they're going to get, so he has to be a very special miniature. But if I put him stood up next to a Primaris Marine, look at the size difference there. Now I know there's a slight bend in the leg, and that's a fully extended leg, but they're not that much difference. If I put him this leg first, you can still see the height difference, and that's angled. Like technically he is, let me try and angle these correctly. Technically he's a full head taller than that Primaris Marine. And the last time I checked, Dante was never described as particularly gigantic. But whatever, his miniature is absolutely gorgeous. He is imposing, and he needs to be. If you look at his miniature compared to the new Calgar, for instance, I mean, new Calgar is a giant, and even then, even in Terminator armour, Dante clearly stands taller than him. But yeah, his armour is a lot more live, it's a lot more musculature with lots more open sections to it. I would dare say that I'm surprised he's managed to survive 1500 years, but hey ho, he's an incredible warrior. But yeah, the miniature's lovely. There's a few details of the jetpack that need adding, but for the most part this miniature is done. And going back to capes, this is a bit of an Uno reverse on the front tabard for the Space Marine Captain. So that is purple at the front, cream or tan at the back. This is purple at the front, black at the back. Lovely. The axe itself, really it's due a blue wash, or contrast should I say, and that should bring out just the right amount of colour that I need for it, that pop. But yeah, all the whites on this have been painted in Corax with apothecary white contrast on top, and then topped back up with Corax, and then at the brightest points you've got little bits of white scar. But yeah, it just gives it that little bit of a pop. Again, the armour is so gorgeous on this. All of this armour is retributed gold, all washed in Dakarov flesh. Very little of it is actually highlighted. This armour is so well sculpted, it doesn't really need it. You can get away with this and it still looks fantastic, I think. And adding in elements of that fresh gold, it adds a certain shininess. Yes, there is a little elements of pooling in there, but for the most part the pooling's not too bad. The pooling adds to the depth of the musculature nature of this armour. But yeah, I love it. Such a glorious miniature. His pistol's frigging awesome. His armour's awesome. He never had wings on his backpack, so on his jetpack, so I don't mind it not having, you know, sanguinary guard style wings. I refuse to get the new sanguinary guard. They are shockingly not characterless. They're not characterless. They're just not characterful. They're Blood Angels enough, but they're not what Blood Angels should be. I have the old Sanguinary Guard. I will keep my old Sanguinary Guard. I just wanted that. I mean, look what they did with Dante. Dante is... He's not... They've not messed around with him. They've not changed him. If I bring out the old style Dante, so much is taken from the old Dante and just transferred across to the new one. You know, you've got the wings on the jetpack. His shoulder pad's identical. His reverse shoulder pad is, again, identical. It's just such a nice ode to the original. And it looks so fantastic. That's what they should have done with the Sanguinary Guard. I know it's been said a million times by a million people, but it's true. There was no excuse for them to remove the wings for these little things. That's not the same. And I don't care how long they make them, they're not wings. The design team that did that model, that did the Sanguinary Guard kit, how on earth can you make Dante as special as this, and then you take the Sanguinary Guard, and there might be a bit of consistency because you've got wings on Dante, but you remove the most important part of those miniatures. And now you've got the Custodes, Venerators, whatever they're called, Venators. They look incredible. They've got wings on them. They look amazing. That's what Sanguinary Guard should have had. And it's our only special unit. We have no other special models. Not squads. The Death Guard have been reduced to nothing. If I bring out my old Death Guard my old Death Guard squads, the kit that you got with the Death Guard unit was incredible. You had so much to go off of. And then they've replaced it with something that is just a cheap imitation. Now, this, again, going back to characters and the old design language that just really, really shouted Blood Angels. This is an old Blood Angels captain miniature. I've done him more as a sergeant, or I suppose he's technically not got his black inner pauldrons. Oh no, he's a captain. There you go. There's the stripe on him. So this is a very old miniature. His face looks absolutely horrendous. He's not entirely done. That is silver with Black Templar contrast. It's not my best work. That's easy to paint up the way that I want it. The base isn't done yet. But the armour, for the most part, is done. There's certain details that still need doing. I will say, looking at it from here, there's not much breaking up the red, which is probably something that I would then look at adjusting. But he's also an old miniature. He's not going to get much playtime nowadays. Especially because my main 40k army is either my Tau or it's my Ultramarines. So, yeah, he's a nice miniature. You've got beautiful little details on the jump pack. You know, beautiful sections on his armour. Little details that just make you go, oh yeah, he's a Blood Angel. Again, come on. Come on, GW. Now, one of the miniatures that they have transferred incredibly well back to 40k with the new one is Astorath. This is, of course, the old one. This is the old metal one as well. And this one sat in the Warhammer store in Wakefield for about a year. So if any of you saw that back in the days where, God, I don't remember, it wasn't a retail park, but it was a small independent, not independent store. It was a Warhammer Games Workshop store. But it wasn't the one in, like, the main shopping centre. It was the one that was out in, like, the town centre. But yeah, this painting is 15 to whatever years old. He was painted brand new, and he lived in that store for, like I say, about a year till I got him back. And just gorgeous, gorgeous miniature. The sculpting of it is fantastic. Again, new Sanguinary Guard. Why have you got the new jump packs? You should always have these style. They go for the old Heresy style. They look so much better. It's just, I mean, look at it with the wings and everything. And the new Astorath met the brief. It didn't ruin what was so incredible about this guy. It just made it more detailed, more modern, better scale. That's what we should have had for a Blood Angels refresh. For everything. But yeah, what a lovely model. I love this. I mean, I don't even do scripture even to this level of detail anymore. I should do, because I've become a better painter, but yeah, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful miniature. Now we move on to something that I'm really excited about. Horus Heresy. I think the Forge World models that are available to the Blood Angels, to the 9th Legion, are stunning. We have such a great selection. Yes, they're overly expensive. Yes, I've seen people buy prints. But the original Forge World models are gorgeous. And this here is my Dawnbreaker. This is the sergeant of the group. And what an absolute beautiful model. Like, the helmet, I've glossed up the lenses so you can still have that cool effect. It's very rare that you can actually see it, but all of the gemstones, they're all glossed up and varnished. But yeah, what a beautiful model. All the detail in the armour is just so incredible. The gold on this, I've started from Balthasar gold. Oh, actually no, this will be contrasted. Okay, so this will be Retributor contrasted with Dakarov flesh and then built up to a slightly brighter gold in some places, like on the top of the jump pack and the knee pad, but with a little bit of a gradient, not a massive one. And then the rest of the details are quite bright, which works because it's set against a deep, rich red. If this was a brighter red, like some Blood Angels are painted, I don't think that would work as well with bright gold. You need the contrast between them. That little section in there, I have the Legion transfer pack. That's hand-painted. The original one melted away when I tried to do a transfer... I don't know what the word is, fixer. But it was a slightly more aggressive one. So it just melted it away. I now have one that works, and I've used it on the 40k stuff, so that's all good. But yeah, look at the jetpacks, man. They're just... This armour is incredible. So, moving on from this miniature, we now have our Crimson Paladin. And this one is not fully painted. I've still got his robe to do, but the rest of his armour is all painted up. The rest of the miniature is done. It is just that tabard. These two little sections here that need to be done in black. A couple of gemstones around there once all that's done. But yeah, what an absolute stunning miniature. Oh, and I've got to do his, whatever you call these sections, to his pauldron. They're going to be... I'm tempted to do white because it'll stand out, but I think it would detract too much from the miniature, so it might just go Rhinox hide, and then we'll go to like a rich reddy brown. This hasn't been varnished up yet, so I still have to be a bit careful. Like, there's been rubbing points on there where the armour's going to need touching up a little bit more. Back of the shield needs working on, but the front of the shield... I mean, you tell me what you think, but that to me is John Cena's face. Not Sanguinius. Unless John Cena is Sanguinius. I know it's hard to see. It's almost like you can't see it. But yeah, really nice sculpt to that. Again, the Forge World models have such beautiful sculpts to them. I can't remember if I glossed up the eyes on this. I'm going to say I haven't. They're really difficult to get to, as are all Cataphracti style Terminator helmets. But yeah, his gorget, that was done, and getting the highlights right in there was really, really difficult. But it paid off. It's a gorgeous looking miniature. And even like the little top section to it is just really, really nice. I love this miniature. It's frigging awesome. A little bit of marbling to the 9th Legion section on there. But yeah, brilliant, brilliant thing. In fact, the little sections of the tabard with the little blood drops on it does remind me a little bit of the blood drops on the end of his cape. So now we're looking at some of the Saturnine stuff from the 3rd edition opening set. And what I have here is my Saturnine Terminator with his plasma bombard and his, I can't remember what they call that. It's like a fusion incinerator, something along the lines of that, plasma incinerator. It does a pretty good job of ripping things to shreds. But yeah, this miniature is really, really nice. A bit like the Space Marine Captain that I've got for Kill Team. We have the gold faceplate, which is usually a sign of like a Praetor, but in this case, these are such high regarded veterans that they get the gold plate there. Again, this whole armour set has got quite a lot of nice little trim pieces that you can paint with that gold trim, just to give it an extra little bit of Blood Angels flair. So the thing is with Blood Angels is they're very artisanal. Now, to compare this to the Crimson Paladin, the Cataphractii armoured Forge World miniature, have a look at the size difference between these two. Now, this Cataphractii miniature, despite being Forge World, does seem to be slightly taller than the normal Cataphractii models. So it should still be fine with the brand new Cataphractii Terminators. It shouldn't look like it's too small, but you compare that to a Saturnine Terminator and everything's tiny. If I put his head roundabout level, you can see the difference in size there. And they're telling me that someone fits in that. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, it still looks great. Now, one of my favourite details with the Saturnine Terminator is with all these layered carapace pieces. You can see I managed to get highlights just tucked into them really, really nicely. Yeah, it's a really nice kit. I've still got little bits in there that I just need to darken up and maybe turn into like a metallic trim. But even down the sides here, it's like everything's tied in with leather because it's a very old school style armour. So there's nice little nods and little details. Yeah, it's a great little set of miniatures. A pain to build, by the way, if you're building them. Don't worry too much about having them just stood up straight in boring poses. Try and give them a little bit of flair. I mean, this one's clearly thrusting his plasma towards something that's going to regret being near him. But yeah, really, really cool miniature. The scale of it's brilliant. And let me see if I can just put it next to a normal-sized Space Marine. You can see the difference there. It's ludicrous just how huge they are. So, we might as well move on then to the Angels Tiers. Now, again, this is a Forge World miniature, and this is not entirely painted, but there are elements of it that do look quite nice and are quite close to being done. So, usually I would use Dakarov Flesh Shade for the gold, but on these little hazard sort of triangle sections, these little details, I went with Recklin Flesh Shade. So the difference being is that it left that natural highlight on the edge, which is what I was looking for. You want these nice silver bright helms, but don't go crazy because you need to leave the eyelets nice and free and black so that it's got some Death Mask-esque vibes to it. But yeah, even like his grenade launcher is absolutely freaking awesome. In the actual game themselves, I think these are way too expensive point-wise. I don't think they do remotely good enough jobs to get like hammered with such high points. But that is kind of the game. This one is the Arch Erelim, so he's the sergeant of the group, as denoted by the black shoulder pads. And the regular models will just have a regular red pad. But yeah, really cool miniatures. The only downside with the grenade launchers on the other models is they do block off the chest piece and like the detailing there at the groin armour. You might even notice, if you look at his pauldron there, it'd be greaves that's covering his forearm. That is a very different arm to the pointing one. I used a separate arm kit for that. And I think with my Mark III command squad, I will go take a piece from that, apply it to that arm, just so it has a similar cover to that. Because I think it looks so much better just having that little bit of an action to it, like a call to action, so all of his troops are going to follow him. Next up, we have the Jetbike, and this is one of my favourites. So anyone who plays 40k will all know that the current bikes look a bit they're a bit naff. Not entirely soulless, they're just bulky little things, but they're not this. I mean, this looks like a downsized spaceship. It's really, really, really cool and covered with a slight hair. But yeah, lots of detail in this. I've spent quite a while making sure that the transitions from the red on there were nice and smooth. Obviously all the highlights in the right places. And even Mr. Baldylocks over there, making sure that he looks right. Even little things like the gloss varnish on his eye lens. Yeah, all specs all glossed up, and even the control screen there, if I can get a nice little shot of that, you can just see all the little details that I've put into it. So even like the radar sort of like tracking lines with all the little dots on it. So you can imagine him flying at high speed, getting the information he needs, and hopefully dunking on some enemies, but chances are he's probably going to get shot down quite quickly. Despite the cool looking nature of it, they seem quite easy to take down actually, which is a bit of a shame, because I want something like this to survive a little bit longer. Yeah, we've got the targeting pod at the front, which is actually quite a degree difference there between the mould. There's like that line between is surprisingly thick for what should be a fairly modern kit. Yeah, gorgeous armour. Again, I've done the highlight spot on the shoulder pad there, just so it's got like a natural like light point coming from it, but not continued it on in too many spots otherwise, because it's a very time consuming process. But it's stuff that I can work on in the future if I need to. But yeah, awesome model. Really, really recommend picking up a set. Comes in packs of 3, and yeah, they just look cool. You can change out the weapons. Again, what I've done with this, if you can see, I might have done it on the female end, but just a little bit of glue in there just to make sure it all bites, and then in it goes, and you can interchange that with multi-melters, heavy bolters, whatever you want. I think the plasma looks the best because it's the chunkiest, but the multi-melter is probably the best job, the best piece for the role. So, moving on from this, we got a very special treat. Now, this here is a very, very special Contemptor Dreadnought. This is the Forge World miniature. I can't remember its full name. The paperwork is not near me, nor is the Liber. So, do forgive me, but it is really cool. You got a jetpack there. I've had to try and fill in little bits where it's not smooth. The only downside with Forge World resin, this is just a bit of a mess. I don't know why they didn't make it out of one piece. It looks like it would have been achievable to do in one piece, but what do I know? But the actual rest of the kit all went together really nicely. I had a few of the claws that just needed a little bending back into place. But yeah, you can see like the assault cannons, Iliastus cannons that are in there. I think that's how they pronounce them. But yeah, really, really cool miniature. And then you've got little flame pods that stick out here, and basically it ignites whoever it's fighting, even though you've got wretched little power claws. So yeah, I wouldn't want to fight one of these things. And the big jetpack, so it skims across the ground and jumps over big obstacles and things like that, which is really quite nice in the game because you can just leap over everything. But yeah, really nice. Again, lots of details. You look at the knee pads there, and it's so ornate. If you look at the model on Forge World, they tend to do the gold of this trim against black. I don't particularly like that as much. I think you have to be careful with the use of black on Blood Angels miniatures, and ideally try and find spots where you can use black, but you can still have that warmth of the red and gold together. So it might be a case of, this top section is all going to be gold, that'll be red, and maybe this one down here, maybe that one will be black, and we'll try and blend it out and make it like a unique sort of heraldry. You can see where some of the spray hasn't gotten in yet, so we'll have to go over that with the brush. But yeah, huge miniature. I'll give you a little comparison for size. It's not as big as a Redemptor. Redemptors are absolutely massive. Now, that looks significantly less tall because it is sort of at an angle. You can see the forward lean to that as it wants to rush into things. But yeah, it is a freaking cool miniature. Now, you might be wondering why I've got both of these out at the same time. What I really, really like about Raldaron, apart from being an absolute badass, he was the first chapter master of the Blood Angels, and Dante is the current chapter master of the Blood Angels. And when you look at Dante's slightly exaggerated scaling, he's actually quite a bit taller than Raldaron. It's more than just a head, it's like a head and a half, which is, again, that's with him not being quite upright. But yeah, the scale for Dante is a little too big. But it's a very nice miniature. Again, lovely armour. But Raldaron is my best painted miniature. I have not painted anything quite as good as Raldaron. Again, you can see his eyes. They're quite tightly painted. I do have to do more work with the flesh. That is mostly a wash. And I got past the eye section. I was like, okay, I'm going to leave it for a little bit now. Again, I might do a little bit like what I did with the Jetbike sergeant there, where he's got a bit of a balding skull. You have that lighter, greyer flesh tone. Or I might do something a bit darker, maybe treat it like he's got a bit of stubble there instead. But yeah, the miniature's really cool. It comes off its diorama, so you got a full diorama piece there, which we'll spin that around. Again, I've seen the one at Warhammer World. They just painted it black on the outside, so that was my direction as well. I've gone for a pinkish, purplish flesh tone for my demons. If I leave that out for the time being, just have a look at all of the detail that is in this, like the tight highlighting on his gorget, the gem that is again all varnished up, the highlights in his pauldrons. Yeah, it's just an incredible miniature. You can just see there's just a lot of depth to play with. You have a nice little highlight spot on there. You got the transfers. I've not had too many problems with transfers so far, but you do want to make sure that you've got like a... I have like a fixer that just seems to get rid of like the bubbles and things like that, or like the haziness that you can have with them, because that would suck. But yeah, brilliant, awesome miniature. And again, the blood on here is blood for the blood god, which is probably not quite accurate for a demon, but it doesn't matter too much. Yeah, even just like the underside of his arms, you can just see the gemstones in there. They really have gone the extra mile with him. Which, to be fair, they should do. If you look at the price of this miniature, he is extortionate to say the very least. He is very nice. He's very well detailed. And yes, he's all Forge World resin. And you get your little diorama piece. But you have to really, really, really want him. And to be fair, I can't see them staying around too long. Although they have just released a new Angron miniature in Forge World resin, so maybe Forge World hangs on a bit longer, but I can see the end days for Forge World now, even though plastic injection has not quite reached this level of detail yet. Not quite yet. Again, we have some incredible painters at the Heavy Metal team, so yeah, it's always going to look fantastic because they do a really good job. But they're not this sharp. I mean, this is just wonderful. Just so much room for details, and even the proportions of him, he looks like a proper Space Marine. Very bulky at the top, you know. The legs aren't overly armoured like some of the modern stuff. Let's see if I can find like his equivalent. And just see like the bulkiness of the legs, the leg armour. It's just so chunky on the Primaris Marines. And you see it on the Firstborns and like the Heresy era, and it's just Really, really nicely put together. Nicely proportioned. It's just when you take him in isolation, and obviously you see like the size difference between Primarchs and him, which, yeah, they're about the same level at the base. Both got a step up. And there's less than heads difference maybe. So it's still in proportion, but in terms of like the thickness of them, very different thicknesses of models. Like that chest piece is just sticking out way too far on Centos. But it's not really a big issue. So, where do we go from Raldaron? Well, I know that you've probably already seen him at the beginning of the video. But yeah, let's get out the big boy. Now, this is Sanguinius, and he is not completed yet. In fact, he's nowhere really near. There's a lot of detail that still needs to go on here. You can see the demon. You can see the little pauldron there on him. I've really tried to make sure that he has as much detail as is physically possible. Just knock it out. It's just going to macro mode. There we go. You can see all of that detail on the pauldron. And again, I've tried to make it like a really deep, dark, like a dirty metal. Same with all of these spikes as well. It's the same technique. It's I do believe for this, I went Balthazar Gold and then gave it a wash with, it's like rat mud. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's the muddy contrast that you get with Citadel paints, and then highlighted with lead belcher. You just get this really, really nice, dark, dirty looking metal. So this diorama, funnily enough, I went to Forge World for the first time probably about 4 months ago, and Sanguinius had just been put back into stock. So I really, really, really wanted to get Sanguinius, so I flew down, had a look around, said, have you got any Sanguinius models in? And they went, nope, but we might have some stock later. I was like, well, if you do, can you put one to one side for me, please? Yeah, no problems. All right, fantastic. The diorama, apparently after I'd been around the exhibition, I'd gone to get something to eat, and apparently there was 4 of them, and someone had bought all of them, and it wouldn't have surprised me if they were scalping them. But as frustrating as that was, they didn't put one aside. So I left a little bit disappointed. I ordered Sanguinius online to be delivered to my house, and they said just ring every day and we'll just see if we can get one in stock, and put one aside for you. I was like, well, thank you. Took about 3 or 4 days, and I'd rang up on the 4th day and they went, no, sorry, we've not got it in stock. And a lady had listened, had heard the conversation and went, is that the guy that wanted the diorama base? And I was like, yeah. And she went, I put one aside for you. I was like, oh, thank you so much. Because I already had Sanguinius on the way. So this base you can only get from Warhammer World. This diorama, as you can see, it comes apart. I have little resin pins, as you can see there on the arm, that just slot into little drilled sections there, so it just sits in, and you can remove him as you need, because he has a diorama base and he has a playable base. So let me line that up. Surprisingly hard to do when you've got a camera in front of your face. But yeah, you can see the detail in the demon there. Again, went for this sort of purplish colour. Technically it's like the horn colour that should be there towards his like cheeks and stuff, but I've kept that with sort of like a lighter tone. But yeah, really, really nice. A little tricky to put together. He was actually really, really difficult to put together because you need to be able to put his knee in there and his foot perfectly situated in there. And I don't remember, I think, is he removable? As you can see, I've not had to put that knee in. He does sit in there quite tight, but I think his foot might be glued down still. But yeah, all the lava details flowing through. There's like little details in there. And then you've got a Mark III helmet. Comes into focus there. The shoulder pad, so of course this is where Horus had told the angel to go to, I can't remember the name of the planet now, to the various solar system that had apparently had a call for help because Xenos were attacking them, and it turns out it was demons and big betrayal. Then they finally figured out that Horus had betrayed them. But yeah, this demon on there is the same brute that you get on Raldaron's base as well. So again, it's all set in the sort of same environment. I've painted them to match. But yeah, anyone that wants this kind of diorama base knows that you can only get it at Warhammer World. And scalpers have unfortunately taken advantage of things like that. But there is now going to be a Warhammer World in the US, which is a few years off, but at least that's going to be an option for people. So coming into just Sanguinius's miniature, you'll see what I've done with his wings is I've actually put on a stud. Let me just refocus it. There we go. So there's like a little stud section on there. And then I drilled a hole into his back. And then thankfully it all worked. And I can have his wings to be removable for transport. But equally, if I need, I can glue them in. His face is nowhere near done. You might be able to see how horrendous the eyes are. Yeah, that's not my best work. The jewels on his chest, on the other hand, are really, really, really nice. Let me take his wings off just so we can look at it. And his gems on his shoulders, they are done. And they're really, really nice. You can see they've been glossed up. This whole model has been varnished. I spray varnished it and thankfully got no light white marks. So he's originally been base coated in white, a very thin coat of Retributor armour, and all of that has been washed with Dakarov flesh. So I'm going for a more warm tone gold. Again, a bit more of an ornate looking gold than sort of your trashy bright golds that we're used to. Let me put his hand back on. So again, got a pin in there, hole in his other hand, and literally just twist it on. The pins themselves, if you're wondering where they came from, they're just the little resin spikes that come out of the gates that feed in to make these details. So really, really easy to get a hold of. Just trim them off. It's like a 2mm drill bit, but double check when you're drilling them. There are some thicker ones. And then yeah, his hand can go on. Obviously I've got him with the sword here, and you'll notice that I do have the sword as well coming out of his hilt. That isn't the case if he's got this sword. It should be separate, but unfortunately it's too thin to pin, so I can't do that. But I do have his Spear of Telesto here as well, which is a bit more of a pain. Okay, I've got to re-drill. That's why that's not done. Every now and then I have to green stuff it, re-drill it just to make sure that it's still secure. So he'll go back to his sword for now. If you're using it in the game, depending on what you want, the sword is really, really punchy for high toughness targets. And it has armor bane and stuff like that, so it's pretty useful against tanks. But he's also got an anti-tank pistol sat right there. And I would just use the sword because it's a beast. But you can use, like I say, you can use his spear. And then his sword down there is backup. But yeah, for me, I'm not going to take the hilt out and play about with it, I'm just going to leave that in there. So he's got 2 swords. If he has, then I'm sure no one will care. If they do, then probably have nothing important to really worry about in life. Still a bit of detail that needs doing on here, like the skull needs redoing because it's been put into molten lava. Yeah, it's a nice base. And you may notice as well with the posing, if you compare the two, again, if you look at Dante when he stood next to Guilliman, which I presume is after his transformation to Primarch, it might not have been, it might have been pre-Primarch, but it comes up to his hip. And on here, with an extended leg, the legs are about the same level. He's only about a head and a bit shorter, which it just doesn't quite seem right. They have just made Dante too big, and I know you could be saying, well, this is an old scale. The model's not that old. I think it came out around the same time as Primarch, so they knew what they were doing. But yeah, they're like similarly placed, similarly designed in terms of their movement. They've got that nice sweeping down movement, and I think it's a really nice ode to Sanguinius to have Dante in the 41st millennium or 42nd play sort of that key role with the Blood Angels. So yeah, it really, really nicely done. Again, we're talking about height, but I put his wings back on and again, he becomes an absolute monster. There is so much detail that needs to go into this miniature. Let me just zoom out there. There we go. Look at that. It is such a cool miniature. Again, his price has gone way up. If you wanted to know the pricing for the diorama base on its own, that was about 60 quid. The price has gone up since, so it shouldn't be too far off. It should be about 60, 62 pounds. I'd recommend it. The two should always have come together. They should always have been sold as a pair, but in the time that's gone by, they've obviously changed their setup with it, and he is no longer paired with his base. But if you can travel at Warhammer World, or you want to pay a scalper ludicrous amounts of money for it, then you can at least get one. They still make them. There's no real given time as to when they're in. You have to ring to see if they're in stock or if they're pouring them, but it's a struggle. I got seriously lucky to get mine within the space of a week. So if you can time it right, and with any Forge World, it tells you when the resin was originally made, and this was made about a month or two before this was, and this had only just come out of temporarily out of stock. So they had them made 2 months prior, wasn't available, and then once these were available, they seem to have brought them out. But yeah, gorgeous miniature. And unfortunately, my most expensive piece of all of my Warhammer. I won't say that's a good thing. I think the prices of Warhammer are quite expensive, Forge World especially. I really like the design of the miniatures, so in some aspects I'm not complaining. But yeah, I can see why a lot of people have issue with it. But at the same time, we're not in a cheap hobby anymore. It's an expensive ordeal for many people that want to play. But you find me a model with more detail than that, and it's just, it's so well designed. Half of what you're paying for is that design. You have to remember it. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and leave some comments about what you'd like to see next. I have quite a lot of miniatures that I need to paint up that are currently sat in the Saturnine box that's out of view at the minute. And yeah, I hope you really, really, really enjoyed it. And again, thank you all for watching.